Good morning and welcome to the November 3rd Issues class at Derry Presbyterian Church in Hershey, Pennsylvania. My name is Kathleen Hetrick, and my role this morning is to introduce you to our speaker, who I will do in a few minutes. But I wanted to let you know a little bit about myself, which is that my husband and I, Ron, have been members here at Derry Church since spring of 2022, and we are both choir members. So we love this church, and we really appreciate that this morning I'm able to share something that I do as a volunteer with other members of Derry Presbyterian. I've been a lifelong resident of Lebanon County, and now we live in Palmyra, which in Rockledge, so we're very close to Derry, and we appreciate that. I've been retired since 2009 from Cornwall Manor, and the reason I tell you this is to tell you that I have worked with seniors for over 40 years. And because of that, and also because I myself now am a senior for 25 years, that I think I know the psyche of the senior population. And that's what got me involved several years ago in a program called Aging Inspired Initiative. This is a group under the Community Health Council in Lebanon County who looks out for the health and wellness of aging seniors. In your packets that you have, those of you who are here this morning, in the packets you have on the left-hand side, and you're going to be using those packets, so open them and keep them open and be prepared. You have tables this morning so that you can maneuver those papers back and forth. On the left-hand side is a blue pamphlet that actually explains what the Age Inspired Initiative is. That's on the outside portions of that brochure. And on the inside, it explains to you a program that Roberta and I are directly involved with, which is the Advanced Care Planning Coalition. And the Advanced Care Planning Coalition, under the Aging Inspired Initiative, is the group that is going around to churches and community groups and explaining the importance of looking at your advanced care plans. That's what we're here for. We're going to talk about the plans that you need to look at as you age and as you get closer to the end of your life. None of us is going to get out of dying from this earth. And most people don't want to talk about this. But the reality is, the more you get involved in advanced care plans on your own, through the methods that we're going to talk about this morning, the more you have control over that and carrying out your wishes and values. So that's really, really important, and you'll hear as we go along this morning. We've been talking to churches and to community groups since 2018, so we have some experience with this, and we know that people come to this anywhere along this continuum. Many people come in and say, oh, I've met with my lawyer, I know what my plans are going to be, and then we'll say, well, when was that you met? And they'll say 10, 15 years ago. And we'll say, have you looked at it lately? And they'll say no. And so today we're going to talk about when you need to do your plans, when you need to review them, how you can do them. We've given you the tools in your packets. And so we hope that you leave today with some new perspectives on the whole issue of advanced care planning. We normally take 2 hours for this presentation, so Derry has given us the time to divide it into 2 separate weeks. So those of you who are here today, please come back next week for the second part. It will be different. It will add on to what you're learning today. But we want to make sure that you hear all the different parts that we promote. I think at this point I'm ready to introduce our speaker to you. Roberta Geidner is my co-coordinator of the Advanced Care Planning Coalition in Lebanon County. Roberta, since 2017, was the developer and the manager of the WellSpan Horizon Planning Program. Unfortunately, they no longer have that. Roberta is retired, and as a volunteer, she has continued with Lebanon County doing this work. She is the owner of RGA Consultants, and she has credentials from a group called Conversations Project and from Respecting Choices, and you'll hear more about that as she goes along. So without further ado, I'm going to give Roberta the opportunity to share her expertise with you, and we want it to be interactive. So those of you who are online, if you this week would like to pick up one of the packets that we're talking about this morning, they are in the office at Derry Presbyterian. You can pick those up, read through them, and know what we're talking about, and then come back next week and you'll have that packet to look through. So Roberta, please come forward.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's great to have you all here, and then millions of people, I'm sure, are live streaming this. I just want to say, Kathy, thank you so much for that introduction. I am certified as a facilitator on first steps, next steps, and advanced steps with respecting choices. And I also serve as a consultant for them in their training programs. I'm also a consultant for 5 Wishes, which is the main document that we're going to review. And I am a certified facilitator and a certified presenter with Aging with Dignity's 5 Wishes organization. I am certified with Common Practice to provide hosting for the Hello Game. And mostly, I've had experience with people dying in my life where that has not gone so well. And so my passion for this really comes out of my life experiences. And the 7 years I spent at WellSpan, watching people die in the most uncomfortable, unpleasant, and not well-supported ways because they didn't have the conversations that were needed. So what we want to do today is really talk about what advanced care planning is. Many people don't know what it is at all. And then what are the conversations that you need to have with family members, loved ones, or the people that are most important to you, so that we can get prepared for next week's presentation on what are the 3 legal documents you need, what makes them legal, how do you fill them out, and what's required in Pennsylvania. So we know from research that if we change the way we address advanced care planning, if we really begin to talk about death and dying, where we start with discussing and deciding that we should have these conversations, deciding that we want to share the information about our own values and goals of care for the end of our life, and we decide on who the 3 people are that we trust the most, who are going to be able to speak for us and make decisions for us when we're not able to do that. Then we should go to the documents. So many of us, as Kathy said, go to attorneys. They fill out the documents, we check a few boxes, and then we throw it in our safety deposit box where nobody gets a copy, nobody knows what we've decided. And once they do get a copy, they interpret it from their own perspective because they've never had a conversation with us. And I can tell you, I've talked to so many people in our health system that say, oh, my son knows exactly what I want. I don't need to do this. Or my daughter, I've talked to my daughter so many times, she'll be okay. And what we hear from that son and that daughter is, where's my mother's documents? Who's going to believe me without documents from her? How do I know that I'm the right person to do this? And so we want to make sure that through this presentation today and the one next week, that all of you know the specifics of what's required and how to have that conversation with your loved ones. I want to start out by having a little audience participation, because these questions that I'm going to ask you to participate in, and maybe take your pencil or pen, go to that part of your PowerPoint handout that we've given you and write your answers to it. So what gives your life meaning? If you think about what's most important to you in life, what brings you the most joy, how do you lose track of time during a day? What would your answers be? And you can give as many answers as you want to this question. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to just share your thoughts with us. So I did this at a church in Palmyra, and I had a 12-year-old boy. And he said, of course, it was his cows that gave his life meaning. And then we did a presentation in Cornwall Manor, and there was a whole table that said, oh, it's ice cream, for sure. So for you, for each of you, what gives your life meaning?
Helping other people.
Helping other people. Kathy's going to write these down. Somebody else want to share? I hope those of you who are live streaming are writing this down for yourself, go ahead.
Cooking.
Cooking, fabulous. I'm right there with you, and Thanksgiving's the best holiday for cooking.
And this pairs very well. Eating.
Eating.
And drinking. You know?
Yeah.
Eating and drinking, yeah.
Somebody else?
Music.
Music. All right, somebody's got to have grandchildren.
I was just say, spending time with family.
Spending time with family. I have 8 great-grandchildren, so, you know, it's those great-grandchildren that are still small. Even the grandchildren. So this is important. Were they all the same? See, each one of us have our own things about what gives life meaning. And so I can't assume that I know that you would have said what you said, or that you would have said cooking or music. We don't know that necessarily, and even our family members don't know it. When my husband died at age 51, 18 years ago, at his memorial service, people got up and said things about him that I had no idea about, because they worked with him. I never went to work with him. And it was so comforting to me to hear that, but then I thought, well, I would never have guessed that about him. And he never really talked about it, and I didn't spend that much time with the people he worked with. Now, I'm going to give you the next question, which is a little bit of a ringer. So if somebody said to you tomorrow that based on old age and frailty or a terminal condition that you might have, and I hope this is not true for anyone here, that you had only 6 weeks, then what's your bucket list for the end of your life? What do you want to make sure happens in those 6 weeks? And how does what we just put up on that change?
I would want my family with me those whole 6 weeks. My kids, my grandkids, my husband.
Yeah. And do your kids and grandkids live far away?
Yes, they live far away.
So then that takes arrangements
Mm-hmm.
and support.
And I wouldn't want them to come for a week. I want them to be
To
with
be
me
there.
the whole time.
Yeah. There's a movie we show by Atul Gawande called Being Mortal, and there's a woman dying of cancer. And the only thing she keeps saying over and over is, I got to get out of here because I have to take my granddaughter to Disney World. I promised her at Christmas. She didn't make it out of the hospital. And so that Disney World trip should have happened much before that. See, if we don't have our bucket list, anybody else want to share what's on their bucket list for the end of life?
I would want to make sure that my spouse is, I'm saying this in quotations, comfortable with the things that need to be done. I mean, we have living wills and wills otherwise, and powers of attorney and so forth, and medical. But still, I can see a panic in the family if you have 6 weeks to live. So I would want to make them as comfortable as possible with knowing what to do.
That's a great answer, Jack. Because there's so many people, when they don't make these plans, whether it's on the financial side with a will and a power of attorney for finance and an executor, or on the medical side with a living will and a power of attorney for health care, it leaves the family in just a panic. Such a panic. And then the arguing begins. And then the anxiety starts. And then the fear steps in. And then it's just a mess. And so by doing these conversations early and often, as our life changes, as our health changes, it makes all the difference in the world. So I want to tell you what caused WellSpan in 2017 to decide they wanted, well, actually in 14, and then to hire me in 2017, because they wanted to change the way that healthcare addressed this issue. We used to just say to somebody when they became a new patient here, fill out these documents, check these boxes, sign it at the bottom. And most of our patients had no idea that we were giving them a living will and a power of attorney for healthcare. They just said, oh, that nice lady at the reception desk said this was important and you wanted me to fill it out, so I did, but I don't know what I've done. And then they didn't do anything with it. Again, it was just something, a part of their medical visit. So we found out that 70% of people want to die at home in our research, but 70% of people will actually die in the ICU in the hospital, in a skilled nursing facility or a long-term care facility that's not home. Why? Well, first of all, because they've never done any documents. And if you don't do any documents, then you are taken to the hospital, you get full aggressive treatment, whether you're 90 years of age or 120. You're put on a ventilator, you're given CPR, you're tube fed, antibiotics, everything that we need to do because you haven't told us otherwise, and you don't have somebody who can legally speak for you, that you have chosen, that knows exactly what your wishes are. Or you have done a document, and that document was done by an attorney or somebody else, and you put it with all your legal documents in your safety deposit box, didn't share it with anyone, so your doctor doesn't have it, the hospital doesn't have it, your kids don't have it. Or it's locked in your safe at home, and the kids just forgot the combination because they're so upset that you're in the hospital dying. And they have to take that time to go to your home, get in the safe, get the documents, and then take the extra time to go back to the hospital. Or it's one of those things where, we don't want to talk about it. So the kids come for Thanksgiving, you've just done your document. On the way out the door, you say, oh, by the way, I saw the attorney this week. Here, put these in a safe place. You may need them someday. The kids have no idea. So they'll open it up, they'll look at it, they'll say, oh, no, not now. I don't want to think about it. Time out, Mom and Dad. It's the best time to have a conversation. We had somebody that came to our first presentation at a church in Lebanon, and an 80-year-old couple just got back from a trip, sitting here just like you, and said, you know what, I've got all my documents, but we can't get our kids to talk to us. They just laugh at us, they roll their eyes, they say, Mom and Dad, you just got back from a trip, what are you talking about? At Thanksgiving, with the tools that I'm going to show you today, they sat down with those kids and had a really, really good conversation. And the next spring, the mother got seriously, seriously ill, and by the next fall, she was gone. But that conversation, that Thanksgiving, changed their whole life. The next one is 80% of people say if they're seriously ill, they'd want to talk to their doctor about their prognosis, their diagnosis, and their wishes for care. But look at how bad we are in healthcare at meeting what our patients want. It says only 7% of people have had that conversation. So why is that? So first of all of us in healthcare have been trained to bring hope. We've been trained to not talk about death and dying. We've been trained to talk about what's the next medication, what's the next treatment, what's the next hospitalization, what's the next surgery, so that we can extend your life more and more and more, even if the quality of that life is not there. And so if we bring it up, we think, well, you'll lose hope in us because we're bringing up death and dying. But we should be bringing it up starting at the age of 18 and then revisiting it every so often throughout everybody's life. Because you could get in a car accident, you could have a heart attack or stroke you don't expect, you could have pneumonia, you could have all kinds of things, COVID. So these conversations are really important, and that's why we give you the tool that if you are experiencing a serious illness, there is a workbook in your packet from the Conversation Project that helps you with all of the questions that you might want to ask your physician or your specialist, so that you can start that conversation. You can say to your doctor, it's okay, you can talk to me about this. I want to know more about how long I have, because I have this bucket list that I want to accomplish before the end of my life. Now, we know that 82% of people want to create their documents. So the majority of us really want to create our documents. But again, only 23% of us have. Well, there's lots of reasons for that. The first reason is, what is advanced care planning? It's talking about death and dying? I don't want anything to do with that. I'm young. I'm only 70. I have a long time to live yet. I'm 72 actually, but I wanted to just cut it a little short. So, you know, I could put that off. Oh, I must need an attorney. If they're legal documents, I must need an attorney or a notary. In Pennsylvania, you don't need either one of them, so you could save yourself that $150. You just paid the attorney to do it. Because they don't, I love attorneys, but this is not their expertise. Their expertise is law, this is medical. Where do I get the documents? How do I fill them out? Who do I give them to when I'm done? Oh, this seems like too much work. If the documents are legal, they must cost something. And what is intubation anyway? So see all of those different barriers. In Pennsylvania, you only need 2 witnesses. You can fill out your wishes, as we had a patient do, on a napkin, as long as it's signed and dated and has 2 witnesses that aren't your healthcare agents, isn't your insurance agent, isn't the person that's gonna run your finances for you when you're not able to. Anybody else, a family member, somebody from your healthcare team, a neighbor, somebody here at church can witness your document. And they're witnessing that you're signing it. They're not reading it, they're not agreeing to it, they're just witnessing that Roberta Geidner on the 3rd of November has filled out this document and she signed it in front of me. And then you don't want to put it in a safety deposit box. You want to keep it in some place that's safe, and you want to distribute copies to everyone. Now this one is so interesting, and this is where the 80-year-old couple raised their hand and said, Roberta, I resemble this next fact. 90% of people feel it's important to have these conversations with their loved ones, not only to share their own wishes, but I want to know what my kids' wishes are, so that whoever they've picked as their healthcare agents, I can support them, or my grandkids over the age of 18. 30% of people have had that conversation. So we want it, we want it, we want it, but we're so stuck in figuring out how to do it. And this is where a document called the Conversation Starter Guide that's in your packet will give you the resource tool that you need to be able to have this conversation. So this is about a 9-minute video that talks about, it's from the Conversation Project, it talks about a 47-year-old man with glioblastoma brain cancer and what he decides to do about his treatments and what he wants to do for the rest of his life. It talks about a 22-year-old in a conversation with her parents about a grandfather that's recently died and the difficulties that occurred when that grandfather died. And Deaconess Hospital in Boston, and what the medical profession is trying to do really across our country to change what's happening when people don't prepare.
The government shut down the budget battle. All this ties back to the bitter bickering over the president's program to bring affordable health care to more Americans. But there is another struggle over American health care underway in homes across the nation. A very personal fight faced by many families over the end of life. Now we know that most Americans want to die at home, but most of us meet our end in hospitals or in nursing homes. How that could change might begin with a tough talk about how we want to die.
My name is Joe Nyer, and I'm 47 years old. I was diagnosed with glioblastoma multiforme stage 4. It's the most dangerous brain cancer there is. And they give you, the median is 14 months from diagnosis. The standard protocol is for you to be on chemo kind of for life. It was 5 days on and 18 days off. I did the 5 days on it, felt pretty horrible for sure. And it took me 13 of those 18 days before I could really get off the couch and get back to being able to do what I love. Because for me it's much more about quality of life than it is quantity. I opted not to continue the chemo protocol at all. It just was too much time of feeling horrible. And for very slim gain.
Joe spoke with his family, wife Lori, sons Alex, Aaron, and Zeke, and his brother David, making it clear to them how he wanted to be cared for and how he wanted to die.
If I got pneumonia or something like that, I would probably go to the hospital if it's a triple condition, you know. But if it's glioblastoma related, I definitely want to stay home. If it goes that route where, you know, I know that the end's coming, I don't want to be away from here.
Saltwater pool.
I can see and feel people going, gosh, why is he not going to do everything he can? And I am doing everything I can. I'm doing everything I think is best for everybody involved, myself and the family. And I knew for me, for Joe, that it was my way to go.
The kind of death Joe Nyer envisions is rare. Despite surveys showing most Americans would prefer to die at home, more than 2/3 die in a hospital or nursing home. Many after stays in an intensive care unit, like this one at Boston's Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital.
He's a 56-year-old, decreased respiratory drive.
He's a 60-year-old surgical wound infection.
Probable bacterial meningitis, along with a whole bunch of other lab abnormalities. Temps 103. Her daughter's here. Her husband does not understand that she's doing very badly.
So it sounds pretty serious.
It's pretty serious. Given her rash.
Today, Dr. Asha Anandaya and her team are treating a 60-year-old woman with multiple organ failure.
This is a patient who just came in last night who became very ill very quickly. We don't know which way it's going to go, but I think it's important that it's clear to the family that the patient is almost as sick as she can be. Do you have any questions right now? I know it's overwhelming. We don't know if she'll survive this. It sounds like they pushed the limits as far as sedation, so I think the issue we often have to start thinking about what the patient would want in terms of things like remaining on life support for a more prolonged period.
Nurse Kathy Purcell has worked in the ICU here for 28 years.
Patients get acutely ill, come into the ICU, and nobody's discussed it. Some family members aren't ready to let go and to say, let's not do more aggressive measures. And so they'll say, you know, to the staff, oh, of course Mom would want everything done. And other members would be like, no, she wouldn't have wanted that done, you know. And the way that I help, and a lot of us do, is to say to the family members, well, you know, if your mom were listening to us, you know, what would she be telling us to do? Or, you know, what was important to her in her life? I think if decisions were made by patients prior to their admissions and expressed to their family, then a lot of the suffering that goes on right now would be avoided.
That's the goal of the Conversation Project, a new organization founded by Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Ellen Goodman.
We want people to go to the kitchen table with the people that they love and have a conversations about what it is that they want.
My interest in this subject really grew out of the end of my mother's life. I was faced with a cascading number of decisions for health care, and I wasn't always certain what she would have wanted. I often wished that I could have said, Mom, is this what you want me to do? Is this what you want to have happen to you?
The project website offers tools to help families think about and talk about what kind of death they want.
When you ask people how they want to die, 70% of them say they want to die at home, for example. And home is not a geographic place necessarily, but it's an idea. It's a way you want to die peacefully, not in pain, surrounded by people you love, not in the ICU. People are not dying in the way they would choose. That's a big motive for the Conversation Project.
That's how J.F. Scherer felt about his father's death. So he and his wife, Luann, decided to have the conversation with their daughters, starting with 22-year-old Caitlin.
What did you feel went wrong with Grandpa's passing? When he got really sick at the end, I don't think anybody knew who was even supposed to make the decisions. Some family members thought Grandpa needed more care and should go to the intensive care unit, where other family members thought he should just be allowed to be at home and be comfortable. So it was very confusing.
If something happened to me today, I would not want to be kept alive by medicine. Okay. If I didn't have a chance to recover, or if I didn't know you.
If there's something going on with me and you're not sure how things would turn out, say, is Mom actually going to get better? Or is she is she going to live, but she'll never talk to us again? Okay. For me, the important thing is, it's not what's the best medical thing that's out there and everything that possibly can be done. It's dignity for me. It's comfort.
The sharers are using the Conversation Project Starter Kit as a guide.
It gave an outline, which was really helpful and important, because all I could do was look back at my father-in-law or somebody that I had lost and say, well, what would I have done in that circumstance?
We changed the way we give birth in America. It was women had their feet in stirrups, they were knocked out. It was women largely, but parents to be in general who said, wait, let's have this experience the way it should be. This is not only a medical experience, it's a life experience. And I think if we change the way we give birth in America, we can change the way we die in America. There are lots of hospitals where healthcare providers are eager to respect wishes, but it's been really hard to feel comfortable doing that. So what they need is for the culture around them to change. How are you?
Dr. Laura Rock agrees. She says when patients' wishes aren't clear, doctors often feel forced to give more treatment than necessary.
We absolutely need a culture shift. It's rare that we have a family that comes in and has had conversations about the kind of care that they would choose or their loved one would choose at the end of their life. It's rare. And when they have had those conversations, they aren't burdened with guilt of making decisions that they think are leading to the death of someone they love.
I like Japanese.
That's what Joe Nyer has tried to do for his family by talking with them about how he wants to die.
No matter what, it's not going to be easy for the kids, for Lord. But it's a lot easier if you talk this stuff through. If you communicate all this stuff out, death's not going to go away. But the fear, the anxiety, all that can go away if you're clear and you communicate with each other. And it's huge.
It is huge. It is very huge. And so this example, if you've not experienced anything like this yourself, is so important. I know as my husband was dying, having these conversations would have made such a difference for him and for his family. If he had just said to them, Roberta's my power of attorney, she knows everything I want, she's going to make the right decisions, and if she does something that you don't understand or agree with, please just support her. Instead, he didn't have the opportunity to make that statement. He had all the documents, both of us were in healthcare. But I made a decision to put him in inpatient hospice instead of keeping him at home to die. His family was leaving, and they decided I was the worst person that walked the face of the earth. And so 18 years later, they still don't talk to me. And that's the passion. That's why I know this research study is so true. And what he just said is so true. There's a little study that was done in an Australian hospital. They were using the Respecting Choices version of advanced care planning with some facilitated conversations, and they had 56 patients. 29 of them were in an advanced care planning initiative. 27 of them were in a control group. So if you know what a control group is, it means when they came in, if they had a document, great. If they didn't, that's the way it was. If they had conversations, that was perfect. If they didn't, that's the way it was. But with the advanced care planning group of 29 patients, if they had a document, they reviewed it. They made sure it was up to date. They made sure every family member knew what was in it and what the decisions were that were going to be made, whether to do full aggressive treatment or to not, whether to try to send the person home or to keep them comfortable in the hospital. Look at the difference. Only 30% of the control group had their wishes known, respected, and honored. But 86% of the people in the advanced care planning group who had all those conversations, who had documents that were understood and updated. 86% of them had their wishes known and respected. The biggest thing for me is stress, anxiety, and depression, 3 to 5 times higher in the control group. And no anxiety, no depression. That's what that video just told us. And this research study has been replicated over and over and over again by lots of people, including myself, with a large study, over 350 people who died of COVID in our hospitals. We looked at the benefits for those who had advanced directives and the detriments for those who didn't. And it also comes down to a reduction in cost when you have advanced directives and you're not provided with treatments that you don't want and that aren't needed to provide you with quality of life. So, what is advanced care planning? Advanced care planning really is a process. It's not a one and done. It's a process that starts at age 18, goes all the way up to age 120, and changes over time. So at 18, you might choose your parents as your healthcare agents, and a brother or sister, aunt or uncle, and you're perfectly healthy, so of course you're going to want everything done. If you get in a car accident or a motorcycle accident or whatever happens to 18-year-olds. I know our 19-year-old got himself in a car accident, was in a coma. We didn't know if he'd survive. His mother and father were divorced, and so they weren't allowed to make any decisions for him because he had not created any documents. They couldn't just automatically step in because they didn't agree with each other. So who was going to make the decision for him? That's why 18-year-olds need to do this. And that's a fun conversation to have. But as you get older, you get to 30, maybe you're married, maybe you have a partner, maybe you've moved across the country, maybe, your parents don't know everything, so I'm going to pick somebody else kind of thing for my healthcare agents. As you're 50 and you get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and you know you have 9 months to live, you're going to change it again. Somebody gets divorced, your healthcare agent dies, they move away, the relationship changes. All of those things go into advanced care planning. So for me, I've got about 10 different powers of attorney for healthcare documents because my husband died. I picked my 2 best friends who didn't show up when I was near death. Picked the wrong people. That's really important to know. Then I've got a new partner. I've got other people in my life. So it all changes. And now that I'm 72, I'm looking at my health a lot differently than I did at 50, I did at 30. And when I get to 120, it's going to be totally different. The advanced care plan then is those conversations get put into a document, and that document gets shared with your electronic medical record, with your provider, your PCP, with your specialist, with the hospital, with your healthcare agents, with those people who are going to have a say or think they're going to have a say in what decisions are made. Just like the video. Nobody knew who was supposed to make the decision. These give people the understanding of who you've picked, who you trust the most, to be your primary, your secondary, and your third choice, 2 backups to that primary person. So we go through these phases of health. Phase 1, I was here till I was 69, perfectly healthy or, with a curable condition. This doesn't depend on age, it just depends on that glass of red wine every night that you have with dinner. Or genetics, I have great genetics, lifestyle, exercise, all of those kinds of things. Then you go into phase 2, which could be acid reflux, diabetes, asthma, hypertension, early kidney disease. But those are chronic conditions that can be maintained either with lifestyle changes, again, medication, sometimes with surgery. These 2 phases, the most important thing you're going to decide is who are those 3 people that are the most important people that I trust the most to make decisions for me. Then we go into Horizon Planning 201, or Advanced Care Planning 201. Phase 3 is progressive frequent complication diseases. That's cancer. That's congestive heart failure. That's COPD. That's end-stage renal disease. That's the early phases of Alzheimer's and dementia. And when you get to the end of phase 2 and into phase 3, you want to have palliative care. Now, if you don't know what palliative care is, it's not hospice care. Hospice is a form of palliative care, but palliative care happens when you're still getting treatments for your chronic conditions, and you want a team of people, doctors, nurses, social workers, case managers, who can help you manage your pain, manage your medications, figure out transportation, food insecurity if you have it, counseling to help you deal with the disease that you're experiencing. When you get to phase 4 is the last year of life. You still want palliative care in the first 6 months, but in the last 6 months, you really want to get hospice as soon as possible. Not the last 3 days, but the last 6 months. Because hospice care, again, supportive services, but now it's a terminal condition that can no longer be treated, or it's old age and frailty where we wouldn't be surprised if you were to die in the next 6 months. Then it's supportive, again, mainly pain management, mainly comfort care, mainly support for your caregivers. You want a living will and a power of attorney for health care in all 4 phases. And then in phase 4, you want to add a document called a physician order for life-sustaining treatment, which is a transport document for EMTs. And all of those I'm going to talk about on the 10th of November when we come back. So how many of you have a living will? See, you're of the age that all of you do. How many of you have a power of attorney for health care? How many of you have 3 people named in your power of attorney? Oh, just 1. How many have 2? Just 1. How many only have 1? The rest of you. Where are your documents? In a safety deposit box. How many? In a safe at home. Oh, how many of you have your doctors have it? How many of you have the hospital? Both Hershey and, I don't know, UPMC, WellSpan. Okay. So see, you've got your documents, but you haven't done all the work yet. And how many of you have had these kinds of conversations with your family members? Long, extended, complete. Not all of you. So this is what we're talking about. Here's the 3 decisions that you have to consider. First of all, who do you want your healthcare agents to be? And not just one person. Because if it's your spouse and they're in the same car accident and they've died, your children can't just step in. State doesn't allow that. Your family can't just step in. State doesn't allow that. If you don't have a document and you haven't named the people, we're not allowed to just have anybody come in. Then it's a state hierarchy that decides. And you may not like that state hierarchy. Like in the one situation, we had a gentleman in a coma getting closer to death. His daughter and his mother were both there. Didn't agree. Guess who got to make the decisions for him? The daughter, not the mother. Because she's the one higher than the mother on the state hierarchy. So these are things to know that are so important. What's the cultural, religious, spiritual, or personal beliefs you have that will influence your decisions? So for Catholics, it may be one thing. For Presbyterians, it may be another. For the Jewish faith, for the Muslim faith, for somebody that is just a spiritualist. Some people have their favorite foods, they have their favorite prayers, they have their favorite music. What are the things that you want your family members to know? And then what kind of health care would you want to receive or not receive if you got into a situation where you had severe and permanent brain damage? So this is one of the 4 scenarios on what you decide about end-of-life support treatments. You're close to death because of a terminal condition that can no longer be treated, old age and frailty, or a catastrophic health event. You're in a coma with brain damage, which is the typical result of CPR for people over the age of 65. Or, like this, you have permanent and severe brain damage. Or the 4th option is something you might name. For me, it's a severe stroke. If I have a severe stroke, I can't dance in the kitchen, I can't play with my great-grandchildren, I can't have that glass of red wine. I'm completely incapacitated. Just do not bring me back. And for some, it's Parkinson's, it's ALS, it's locked-in disease, it's Alzheimer's and dementia. So the first one, choose your decision maker. And who should that be? So don't just write down, oh, I want my best friend to be my decision maker. Because I can tell you from experience that best friend's going to call me at the hospital and say, she didn't ask me, I don't want to get in the middle of this, please take my name off her document. And I'll have to say, you have to talk to her. I can't do that. She's got to change her document for you. So talk to the person, make sure they'll accept the role. Make sure there's somebody that can deal with conflict in case there's conflict and dysfunction that goes on, that can deal with this crisis of you dying, and can deal with it in a way that they're going to totally talk about your wishes and your goals, not do exactly the opposite because that's what they would do for themselves, or they want to hang on to you. 2 people at the least, 3 people is preferable. Explore your religious beliefs. Like I said, what's your faith say? Have a conversation with your minister, your deacon, your spiritual advisor. Have that person even advise your healthcare agents. And then explore your goals for medical care. And this means think about these scenarios that I'm going to show you that are in the 5 wishes. Any of these scenarios, you would receive all the care you need. You would always be kept comfortable. But if 2 physicians were to say to you or to your healthcare agents, there's no chance of recovery here. The only thing, if we put them on a ventilator, we do CPR, we give them tube feeding, it's just going to extend the quantity of their life, but there'll be no quality. When 2 physicians say that to you or to your healthcare agents, then what would you want? Would you want to be in the ICU? Would you want to be kept comfortable at home? Would you want to go into hospice care right away? And there's something called patient education guides that are also in your packet. Most people think CPR is what they see on TV, which is the furthest thing from the truth, because 75% of the time you don't survive CPR, particularly if you're over the age of 65. Only about 3 in 100 will survive if they're in a skilled nursing facility. Only 5 in 100 will survive if they're in the community and they have a heart attack. So CPR is not everything we think it is. These patient education guides will tell you about CPR, about dialysis, about tube feeding, hydration, nutrition, and tube feeding, and about intubation and ventilation. So the big question is, as you get to this section of your living will, what treatment would you want? What treatment would you not want? In all cases, you're kept comfortable. We don't starve you to death. We don't keep you from being hydrated. We don't make sure that you're constantly in pain. That is not what happens. Some people are afraid if they do a living will, that's what will result, but that is not the case at all. We will do everything you've asked us to do, and if it's something you didn't want, we won't do that, and we will honor your wishes. What matters to me, this is in your packet on the left-hand side in the back. This is what I was talking about, this serious illness workbook. If you have serious illness and you want to start that conversation with your doctor about your prognosis, your diagnosis, how much time you have, what quality of life is going to diminish over time. It's all in this wonderful workbook from the Conversation Project and Adrian Labs. Now this is a little 3-minute video, and this is what you could do over Thanksgiving. This kind of gathering, again, using the Conversation Starter Guide, a way to start the conversation. This is I always get the age wrong, I think he's 86. Might be 85, might be 87. Gathered together with his family for his birthday party.
And finally tonight, ABC News wants to join you in something right at the heart of the American family. how we can all help the people who care about us make decisions near the end of our lives. And 9 out of 10 of you have told us that we should all be talking about it at all ages, what we want. And yet only a fraction of us have done it. And we know it makes a huge difference in the health of the caregiver as well as those cared for. So ABC News has taken cameras inside a vital, loving family, part of a new community, deciding to have a conversation.
This is 85-year-old Norm and his daughter Maureen.
My dad is 85 today. He's still very, very active. He's a wonderful friend.
Throughout life, daughter and father have always talked about everything, except one thing: how to control the end of your life in the same way you control the prime of your life. So dad and daughter gather the family together, 3 generations, for an act of love.
And so now we're just asking that you share some of your thoughts about what you would like at the end of your life, so that we can honor your wishes.
They are part of something new underway for families in America that says having the conversation is a gift parents and children give each other. And there's proof of the difference it makes. Studies show depression rates plummet after a loss if the families have had the conversation. Renowned physician Dr. Atul Gawande says doctors and nurses see it firsthand.
When you're there in that moment and you're talking to the family and you're saying, how much will it bother your father if he ends up this way? And they say, more often than not, I don't know. We never talked about it. That it is incredibly traumatic for the family, for the doctors involved. There's often conflict. It can tear families apart.
So Dr. Gawande has become part of a team led by Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Ellen Goodman. It is called the Conversation Project. It is a kind of guide for families looking for a way to begin.
If we give them a way to talk about it and give people something to hang on to when they're afraid to start this conversation, they can do it and pass it on.
Families like the Jennings. They looked over the conversation guide before they sat down together. First, there's laughter.
Oh, my golf swing's still good.
And then Dad directly eases his daughter's guilt and worry about having put their mother in hospice.
I felt like that meant we were giving up on Mom.
She was in a lot of pain, and I think it was handled real well.
And next, Maureen asks her dad for clarity on what he considers a good end to a great life.
So if you were in a condition where you couldn't make decisions for yourself, how extreme would you want us to take measures to save your life versus letting you go?
Well, I think I'm ready to go anytime. You know, I wouldn't prolong anything. I mean, I've lived a great life. Pretty lucky. And because of you guys, you know.
Unexpectedly, a grandson is inspired to speak up about his own wishes for his own life.
That if there was no meaningful communication, that I would want you to stop trying to intervene.
We're ready for you to go soon.
Well, we're not ready for you to go that soon either, so.
One by one, the others weigh in, all ages. And with that, another family has joined a kind of estate planning for the heart. A conversation beginning in America.
So, conversation for the heart, estate planning for the heart. How important is that? So this booklet, the Conversation Starter Guide, is in the left-hand side right at the back of your packet. That's what we've been talking about. And here's your assignment. So I want you to take this guide, and on the right-hand side, you'll find this booklet, the 5 Wishes booklet. I'd like you to take this home, and over the next week, with friends, with family, even if it's only yourself, go through these 2 documents. See what you think. Have the conversation. Even if you have your living will already, I can tell you, if it's been done by an attorney, it's very incomplete. I think what you'll find is this document is a document with a heart and a soul. Wish 1 is your healthcare power of attorney document. Wish 2 is your living will. But it gives your healthcare agent what their responsibilities are in Wish 1. It gives you the scenarios on what situations would be that you wouldn't recover from. But then Wish 3, 4, and 5 cover how comfortable do I want to be and what does that look like for me? How do I want people to treat me, particularly with you being a person of faith? And then Wish 5 is what do I want my loved ones to know? And it gives you the opportunity to sign it on page 10 with 2 witnesses, and it's all done. So I'd like you to do that, bring that back with your packet next week, and we'll talk a lot about it. So I just want you to know, this is who I am. My card is in your packet. This is our gift to you. We hope you'll talk to others and bring others next week. As Kathy said earlier, the packets are available in the church office along with the PowerPoint for today. And I want to just open it up quick. We have about 5 minutes before they shut this machine off. Any quick questions? There is an evaluation at your place. So as I'm taking questions, if you wouldn't mind filling out that evaluation form on the bright yellow paper and turning it into us. Questions?
How about comment?
Comment.
I've seen some families really get torn apart who otherwise got along. And a lot of it has to do with, of course, money, or a lot of it has to do with who gets the piano, who gets the grandfather clock, that kind of thing. Or do we sell this and then split the money? I mean, you're very well founded in saying you need to go over it every once in a while because things can change and desires can change.
Yeah. What you're talking about is our property, which goes into our last will and testament. But I've also seen what they talked about in the video. Put mom on the ventilator. No, mom didn't want to be on the ventilator. Put mom in the hospital. No, mom wants to die at home. And that is a big fight as well. Mm-hmm. And like I said, with my husband's family, they just fought over what we were doing for him. And there wasn't anything left to do because he had pancreatic cancer. Yes, sir.
I've been in the senior living field for 50 years. And this is the clearest, most comprehensive, most well-presented presentation I've ever heard.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
You know who you were.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And next week come back because we're really going to dig deep into the weeds on living wills, powers of attorney, and the post document.
This conversation piece is critical to it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
There's additional packets over on the table if you have other family members you want to take them for. There's additional conversation starter guides and some other materials from some of our coalition members. We have, you'll see in the PowerPoint, we have probably 15 different organizations. All of these organizations are part of our coalition. And so we've got every major health system, the legal community, the area agency on aging. So it is now 10:13 and Kathy.
Do you want to flip back to, there's a program, in your packets is a listing of all the different types of ways that we present this information. It's not just through this presentation this morning and next week. We also do the hello game, and you have it on the left-hand side. And we're all available to come back to do those presentations.
And even a death cafe, if you'd love to sit in a death cafe sometime.
May I comment that if I'm remembering this correctly, when we were in the Hershey Med Center with my father, and Hershey wanted the documents to say, do we treat them, do we not treat them in this situation and that situation. But they also came down to my wife and I for wanting the same thing, and we were there to treat him, but they wanted the documents, and I give them credit for that.
Yeah.
For us, yeah.
Well, that's great that they extended it beyond your father and knowing.
Mm-hmm.
At your ages, it is critical. I mean, I think as we get older, this is even more critical.
In the packets on the left-hand side is the piece from Hershey Medical Center in there that explains their attitude about advanced directives and the actual form that they utilize. So we've included that as well, because we're not living in Hershey, some people do that. It's much shorter, it's much more succinct. My recommendation is that you look through the 5 wishes and use that as your guide. Compare it to what you all said you have your advanced directives. So compare what it's asking you to what you have written already, and just use it for a workbook type thing. But if you want to change it, you can utilize that. It becomes legal, but then it makes your other document non-legal anymore, because you
Well, it's updated, and you should be updating it on a regular basis. All right, it is 10:15. They're gonna cut this thing off, I think.
Oh, that's
Jack, right?
okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
You probably have another minute or so.
All right.
But that's good, but that's.
Any other questions or comments? I thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming this morning, and I look forward to seeing you next week as well. I want to introduce Paul Knight, who drove here from Princeton. He is one of our newly certified presenters with 5 Wishes, and he's doing a bang-up job over in New Jersey. So I'm glad to have him here this morning to learn together.
And Dawn is a member.
And Dawn, that's right, is a member of our coalition. She's with Select Medical and Penn State Health Rehabilitation Hospital.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bring your neighbors, friends, whatever. I didn't say earlier, we're here because one of the dairy members saw us do this presentation at the Dairy Senior Center, and she said, she called me later and she said, how can I get you to do the same thing at my church? And she said, I live in Palmyra. So I was thinking of Palmyra Church. And then she said, oh, I go to Dairy. I said, well, I go to Dairy. And I didn't get this to happen, and it was because of Becky and then Jack, who went to the Christian Education Committee, that we're here today and next week. So pass the word.